I think we can officially start. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Today, I've got with me a very special guest. And if you've been involved in real estate, or even if it's just an interest of yours over the last few years and you've been following it, you've likely heard of Maria. Maria is a real estate investor, boot camp coach, author, radio host, YouTuber. The list goes on and on. So a quick Google search will fill in all of those details. But to put it simply, she knows the space and she's been in it for a while and has mentored a number of landlords. So thank you for joining us today, Maria.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Always looking forward to sharing with all the landlords, because we need to share. That's kind of what we do. I mean, I've been in business since 1982, Darren. I've been in real estate since 2000 as an investor and landlord. And that's what we need to do after a while, is we need to share what we've learned to bring in the next generation without them making these terrible mistakes, which a lot of landlords are doing right now. This is what I see. A lot of landlords are really hurting now because they've chosen the wrong person or they've chosen the wrong type of property.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what you're saying about the sharing, because I know anytime I open up my feeds, I see a lot of your work, and I get a chance to listen to a lot of it. And where does that kind of sharing mentality come from? And you've been in the business a long time. What kind of inspired you to start helping others along the way?
Well, when I've been a teacher since I was a little girl, I'm a teacher by nature. And
Right.
So when I see people hurting, then I want to help. And I've learned that from my parents. They were very helping individuals. Then they saw someone who was having trouble, they were there to help. So I learned from them, but my nature is a nature as a teacher and as helping. I've been like that since I was a little girl. If I saw a stray cat and they were crying, they had no place to go, I bring it home, So I mean, that's my background.
Right.
But especially when I saw in real estate the mistakes a lot of landlords were making, I even started my group. For 5 years, I was running the Niagara Real Estate Investment Group out of the Niagara region. And then I built my website, realwealthrealestate.com. And then I decided to go and have a YouTube video with 202 videos now to help landlords, because I could see the need. And I started my own group, my own Facebook associations, as you know, like I have the Canadian Real Estate Investors Association, the Ontario Landlords Association, the Canadian Landlords Association, and many, many more. And you'll probably say, Maria, why so many? Well, because there's different sectors. There's people from all over Canada. I even have an international landlords association, because there's landlords all over the world that are having trouble. So that's why I broadened it out. And for 5 years, I've been posting and sharing, and because I wanted to help. I could see what was going on, that people would have tenants in their home for 2 years, 12 months, can't get them out, are getting blackmailed. Like, I mean, I can't stand stuff like that, and these poor landlords don't know where to go, and the LTB is not helping them. The Landlord Tenant Board is not helping them, right? So you've got to learn yourself in the very beginning, is get the right person in to begin with, and you won't have any problems. And I've learned from my own experiences. I've had problem tenants, but I've never had anyone destroy my property. They may have left a mess or whatever else, but I've learned with every person I had a problem with, Darren, I learned what not to do with the next person. And for 12 years now, I haven't gone to the LTB. I haven't had to. I've controlled my own real estate, and I do all my own property management, which is the way to go when you're a small landlord.
Right, absolutely. And, that's something I've heard, a story I've heard repeated again and again, is the trial by fire that so many landlords.
Oh, yeah.
And, even I'm sure, Andrews, our founder here at Tenantcube,
Yes.
His story.
Yes.
And it's the exact same thing, right? And it happens far too frequently to landlords. And, that's one of the reasons why we do this webinar monthly as well, is, we want to bring on industry specialists to help educate landlords on the environment, because, as our header today sort of alludes to, is it does change quite frequently. And I think we're in a time of big change, especially with some of the news that's happened over even the last year, 24 months. We've had COVID, we've had crazy home prices, we've had all kinds of different things start to take hold. And I'm just, curious with, COVID on the back end now, I think we can, pretty safely say that we're starting to return to normal. It looks like it may be going that way. What do you think things are going to look like? Because we've seen skyrocketing prices throughout COVID, and a lot of people say that may be because people are at home, they're not spending their money. Well, now they'll be back out. They'll be out spending their money again. Is it going to be continually difficult for new landlords to get into the game?
Oh, yes. I mean, who can afford to pay $800,000 for a house or
Mhm.
even $600,000 that will cash flow? You've got to do something different with it, right? So, yeah, I mean, like, and not everyone, Darren, should be a landlord. Quite frankly, not everyone should be a real estate investor. And if I can just say something, it's because I know you have a lot of beginners, which is who I deal with, because they're the ones that we can help become future good landlords, right? Is that don't go into real estate thinking you're going to make your millions, you can be able to live off of your real estate investments, because you won't for many, many years. And in the many, many years that you're getting up to a point where you can live off of your investments, you will learn many lessons, you will make many mistakes. So, like certainly learning along the way and not making such terrible mistakes that will cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars is the way to go. I mean, if you're learning as you're going. So myself, I've been in business since 1982. That's when I started my first business in New York City. Then I moved to Niagara Lake, and then I started my own business here as a business development consultant and trainer, and I developed courses. And there's the teacher in me again, okay? And I developed courses for universities and colleges and high schools and all of that, right? And then in 2000, I thought, okay, I purchased my first house in 1988, and it had gone up in value. But again, I didn't even know what that meant. So, and I could see I wanted a bigger house, of course. My mother even said, "What do you want a bigger house?" It's because I want to move forward, right? I've never been a person that sits in one spot. I've got to keep evolving. So I refinanced my own property and I purchased another house. And that's how I started my journey of becoming a real estate investor, because I knew with real estate, I controlled the asset and I made the money. But I knew there was a lot of work involved. This is not an easy task. This is not an easy task. And I went to real estate because I wanted to become financially independent. Since I was a little girl, 10 years old, I wanted to be financially independent. But it took me so many years to get there. Not that I haven't learned, not that I didn't have good businesses on the way, but to be truly financially independent, it is real estate, but smart real estate. Smart real estate and controlling the asset and controlling the people that you put into your home. You're only as good as the tenant that's living there. You're only as good as that. And you can stop them at the door before you make that mistake. And I offer my landlord's boot camp. I know you know about that. And in 4 weeks, you'll learn so much about how to stop them at the door that you won't have problems. You won't have problems. And that doesn't mean you've learned everything, but it sure gets you started on the right road to learn what to ask, what kind of questions to ask. I mean, if I say, Darren, landlords are made, they're not born.
Right.
And myself, since 2008, I have been financially independent with my real estate. But I've had so many years of business experience before that I brought into it. So I was able to do it. And it meant on the number of properties that I had under my control, what I did with them, because I switch up every 6 months what I'm doing with my properties. I mean, that's the one thing my real estate investor always said, Maria, she says, I'm astonished that you keep switching. I said, yeah, because you've got to move with the time, right? She says, and you move so quickly. I said, yeah, because you've got to move quickly, right? So, I mean, I've always been that way, Darren. That's me. I've always been a business person. My whole family, we're entrepreneurs. So since I was a little girl, I already had businesses I was running,
Well,
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, like, we could definitely see that when you're in the market for a while, you learn a couple of things. But like you had mentioned, for example, that, sometimes new landlords or even maybe those who are developing their portfolio can make a lot of mistakes. Would you say that tenant selection is one of the bigger or the
Yes.
mistake that they often make?
Yes, basically, property, management is how do you manage your property? How do you manage the people go in? That's pretty much the basics, right?
Right.
And I know your Tenantcube is really into that. And it's good that Andrews had bad tenants, so he knows what not to do, right? Because once you have had bad tenants, you know what not to do, unless you keep making the mistakes. But how do you learn? You have to learn from someone who's done it already. And when I started 21 years ago, because I started in 2000, I made sure I went to many meetings. I joined many groups. I paid for those groups. I paid for the meetings. And I sat down with landlords and asked them, how do you choose a good tenant? What kind of paperwork do you use? And I sat there and I shut my mouth and listened, right? And I learned. And I have paid thousands of dollars for my education, Darren, that I'm willing to, I offer it to people for nothing. You think they take it? No, so they have to start paying now because they're not listening, right? And they're so confused. Since 2020, Darren, what I found is the landlords are going crazy. They're going around in circles. They don't know what to do. So they're jumping from Facebook page to Facebook group, trying to ask questions. But who are you asking? You're asking other people that may not know. So when somebody says to me, Darren, I have a problem with a tenant, I say to them, get a paralegal. Do not try and do it on your own, because those forms are so difficult to understand. You make one mistake, you go right back to the line. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to make mistakes. And on my Real Estate Media News Network on YouTube, there's 202 videos. You can go into the property management, successful property management, and just listen. Because I've had paralegals on there, I've had lawyers, I've had property managers, like we're giving you the points of what to do, right? And I know some people get confused. So if you don't want to get confused, come to my landlord boot camp, pay for it, and learn within a month. And then join my mastermind after that, goes on for a year, and you will learn what real estate is all about, truly what real estate is all about, and not what you're reading in the books. And don't go by what the Americans are doing, because they're not the same as us, Darren. And that's the mistake. And I'm glad that you guys are Canadian. Your app is Canadian and is based for Canadians. Very important.
Well, and I mean, we definitely started with working close to home, right? So we do service in the US as well. But one thing that we kind of found in some of our earliest talks was the Ontario landlords specifically, and a lot of them out west, they're having the same issues that you've alluded to today. And it's tenant selection, it's screening, it's those high risk sort of scenarios where if you make the wrong decision, it could really hurt you. And I think we saw with COVID as well, with some of the memorandums and some of the policies that kind of came out. It really put landlords in a difficult spot for an extended period of time that I don't think anybody had prepared for. And I can see is if you have a portfolio of, let's say, 1,000 units, that's one thing where a couple of people not paying rent is not going to be a huge deal to you. But if you have 2 or 3 units, even one not paying can really harm you. And I don't think a lot of people, were prepared for what happened in the last.
No. And especially when the government said you don't have to pay rent. And even though they sent money to the landlords, the tenant decided, oh, free for all, I don't have to pay you rent anymore, right? So I could see the landlords were really hurting. And that's why I produced so many shows. I was producing one a day. And I had wonderful property managers that gave of their time freely to talk about this, because they're concerned also for the landlords, right? They're landlords themselves. These are not people just selling courses, because they're not selling any courses. They're just giving you information because they're concerned, like I'm concerned. And just food for thought, that from 2020 to now, every single person that's living in my homes has paid on time or even ahead of time. And if they're moving out, they have not destroyed any of my property, and they will not destroy my property. So the proof is in the pudding, right, Darren? The proof is in the pudding.
Always. And I mean, even here at Tenantcube, we, really, really believe in screening, the 3-step process, what I call it, which is 1 is your application, 2 is your screen, which is your credit report, and the 3rd one is going to be the interview. And I know you're a big fan of the interview as well.
Oh, yeah. But what I do, Darren, is I interview them on the phone right away. I don't waste my time. But I know when someone doesn't know even what questions to ask, but they learned that in my group also, right? But you're right about that. I just do it on the phone because I eliminate them really fast. But I've been doing it for 21 years. So I listen to I don't have to see them. I can listen to their inflection. I can hear what they're telling me, like I can tell right away within half an hour, if I'm talking for half an hour, which I very, very rarely do, unless it's somebody who probably will end up being in my homes, right?
Right.
You can tell right away, just even when they send any type of, they go on Kijiji and send, I have to move immediately. Well, the first thing I say is, I'm sorry, we don't do anything immediately,
Right.
or I have cash to give you. No, we don't do that. Okay, I'm just giving some thoughts here. You don't take the cash from them. They're desperate. And you make sure you check on the last landlords. And if they say they're working, you make sure you check on that. Like, you need to do that to protect yourself.
Right. And you had also mentioned, not, with Tenantcube, we weren't following the Americans. We were, a Canadian-based technology. But somebody who has followed the Americans is some of those larger investment firms now. I'm sure you have heard the news about the $1 billion planned to be spent investing in single-family homes.
Yes.
Do you think, with that coming into the market, and I know it was already kind of there, but it's now they're really, moving forward with it. What do you think impact that's going to have on your everyday mom and pop landlord? The type of people you help, the type of people we help.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I'm going to do my radio show tonight actually about that. I'm going to be talking to Jarek Buholik from out west, and Navtash Sandok is going to talk. He's not going to be on tonight, but I have a radio show, 4 radio shows a day that I have 7 days a week.
And I would encourage everybody who is here today to go check those shows out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Send me a link. Go on Facebook Messenger and ask me what it is, and I'll send you the link. It's myradio.rocks.com. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night, 12 noon, 12 midnight. And you say, why? Because it's all over the world, right? It's an internet radio show that I have. Yeah, but you know what? And you and I were discussing this yesterday when we had a nice little discussion. I loved our discussion, by the way, yesterday.
Thank you.
Yeah, you taught me a lot, and I'm looking at, you and I will discuss something in the future, but certainly that is affecting landlords. But I just want to say something to you. Just think about the strategy, okay? They're coming into the small landlord scope, the single family dwellings, because they have no place else to go. Like, don't have multiplexes, they're not building them, or if it does, it takes them 5 years, 10 years, right? Between getting the permission and setting up the plans, it costs millions and millions and millions of dollars. So now they see the single family dwelling, and they call it, they're doing it because they want to give housing that everyone can afford. Excuse me, who can afford $1,650 for an apartment? That's 1 bedroom. So that's a lie again. So what I see happening though, Darren, is I see them not coming to me and you. I mean, so I have my properties. First of all, I wouldn't give them away. They're my bank books anyways. Mm-hmm. And so you really think that they're going to come to me and negotiate with me, even if they use a real estate agent? You think they're going to go to each person and negotiate unless they have a whole portfolio? That's different. But I mean, first of all, I wouldn't give away my portfolio because that's my bank book, and that's another topic, okay? I see them going into, because if they're negotiating with me, it might take them a month. They're losing money in a month. Then they go to Harry, another month. Like, come on. What I see them doing is going into areas where there's developments, buy builders, and they just buy the whole development out. That I can see happening. I think the other thing too, Darren, is to buy a single family dwelling, because single families for single, there's no money in it, no matter who buys it. Because if you're going to pay 50% over, who's going to pay you for the rent? What they will do is they'll probably get the builders to develop probably put 2 or 3 apartments in each house. That's what I see happening, because that's the only way you can make money with a single family dwelling that will cover off on the amount of money you're spending to purchase it. So they will probably ask the builder, okay, now you're going to have to put an apartment in the basement. While you're building it, you get all the permissions, you do it, you get charged for it, and we'll pay you more money for it, because we know we can charge $1,600 or $1,700 for the bottom level and maybe $2,000 upstairs. And let's see if it cash flows. But the problem with all of that, Darren, is they better be careful what area they're going into, because the people in that area may not be able to afford the rent. So if they're going to go and do these big developments, they better check out the tenant profile. Like, that's the other thing I teach, like I'm sure you do, is look at who's going to rent from you. How much can they afford? Like there's no sense in buying a house that nobody can afford to pay for it. And then if you do get somebody who says they can afford it, he's going to probably put people in there like they did in Toronto. You heard about that, right? This guy went and he rented 10 places and put as many people as he wanted. He destroyed the property.
About that. Those were those large luxury homes, correct?
Yeah. So these landlords said they never did a credit check on the guy because he was driving a fancy car. Are you kidding me? That's the first thing I would do, because why would somebody with a fancy car want to rent from me, right? I mean, they can go and buy a house, right? That's why I'm looking. So you see, these are the little tricks you learn as a landlord. You sniff them out. You sniff these people out, because there's no way someone who can afford a really fancy car and they dress up really. First of all, when I see somebody overdressed, I think, what game are you in? You know, come on, that's not the way. Multimillionaires don't dress that way. I've known many multimillionaires, they don't dress fancy. They may get a big truck if they want, but not even that. They're not going to waste their money unless they need it to work on the properties, right? Otherwise, I mean, I know a multimillionaire, she drives a Honda like I do, because she doesn't need to, right? It doesn't cost very much. It's very handy. It's a great car. It looks sexy too. You know, I get a red one. And I've met multimillionaires that you didn't even know they were millionaires, because they don't talk about it. They're not showing off. The ones who show off there are not truly millionaires. They're show-offs, and they're probably more in debt than they are in having the money. If you look at Warren Buffett, he has a secondhand car all the time, goes to the same place and eats the same thing, and is the most humble man in the world.
Yeah,
he's the richest man in the world. Isn't he an example to look to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, one thing I've picked up from a lot of the conversations I've had with landlords coming in through our system was, they just don't know what they don't know with respect to screening, because with screening, a lot of times people think, okay, well, nice guy, he's got a family, nice firm handshake, that sort of thing. And a lot of people still have that in their mind that, hey, I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. But again, it all comes back to you got to have those systems in place to avoid trouble. But another thing I've recently kind of noticed a lot of people are talking about and having conversations about with us is they're curious, and you'll be a great person to answer this, is in these times where things are expensive, you have competition from large corporations, you're post-pandemic, how do you grow a portfolio if you're trying to move a small portfolio into a little bit of a larger one in times like these?
Slowly. And understand that wealth happens slowly. And it's value investing. So you always talk about value investing, which means you need to know the business, like inside out, right? That's education. That's the first thing. You don't go by the trends. I always look at what the trend is and I go in the opposite direction, Darren. That's what I've always done. Okay. So when I first started 21 years ago, nobody really knew about the short-term rental, but I got into it because I could see there was the money in it, right? And it's been very good for me. But now I see there's everybody and their dog is in the short-term rental. Now I've gone back to the long-term rental. Right. Because I see there's a need. So I always look, when I invest, even in penny stocks, whatever it is I'm investing, I look at the need, I look at the value, and I know that I'm not going to make my return on investment right away. It may take 2 or 3 years before I make my return on investment. And that is because I'm very cautious. I don't jump in feet first unless I know what I'm getting into. And that's what people need to do. Is you will not become a millionaire overnight by owning 1 or 2 properties. That means nothing in the long term. And if you overpay for property, what are you going to do if the interest rate goes up? I mean, that's the other thing too, right? Like I always look at making 10% return on my investment, no matter what it is. One way or another, I'm going to make my return on investment. And my strategy has always been, I've always overcharged for everything that I rent out. That's been my strategy for 21 years. And people would say to me, you'll never get that. I said, just watch me. Because I even to the tenants give them the value investing in them too. You want to stay in my home? This is what you're going to get for it, which you don't get out there. So it's always studying your market, going very, very slowly, get a good, first of all, get a good property. And I have a video on that. Does your personality match your house?
Mhm.
Does your investment strategy match you and your lifestyle? So, I mean, that's the one thing is are you willing to do all that work? And I remember doing all that work of finding the tenants, signing the paperwork. And if I couldn't find someone mowing the grass, I went in and mowed the grass. If I didn't find someone cleaning, I cleaned. I did everything because I had to learn. And I learned that from my parents. My parents were in real estate also. They were doing fix and flips. And in those days, it was done differently, but they built everything themselves and they relied on each other and they did a good job, right? They were financially fine at the end of their lives, but they had worked hard. So I always saw I had to work hard to get where I wanted to get. So I was willing to put in the time to learn, Darren, and the money to learn it, right? Because I'm a forever learner.
Well, that's good. And I think we all have to be, regardless of where we're at in the journey. And I have one more question,
Sure.
while we're within the half hour here still, before we get into some questions. And this is probably the last piece on just the changing market. But this is one that, really took place early in COVID. And now we're starting to see a bit of a reversal. But I'm sure during COVID, the rents in Toronto and the major cities plummeted, and there was a big migration out to the suburbs and beyond. And that increased rents out. We're both in Niagara, for example. That increased rents out this way, and it had a reverse effect out in Toronto. It's starting to turn back. What do you think is going to come of that trend that took place very briefly? But
Okay. Well, that's a really good question, Darren. I'm glad you asked me because even when people were posting, they were reducing their rent. I said, don't do that. Don't reduce your rent. Hang on. Okay. So I see, because like I raise my rents and I told everybody you should be raising your rents at this time because you don't want the riffraff to come into your home. You want the best people that will appreciate. They'll find the money somehow. They have to, right? So too many landlords got caught up on the amount of money and they lowered it and they lowered their standard. I have gone the opposite. I've raised my standard. But I think, Darren, also I've been a saver. So in these hard times, I had money in the bank. I always had money in the bank that carried me over the rough times until I was able to refinance my properties that had gone up in value so much with the hyperinflation. And I have the money, I put it in the bank, and I don't have to worry about what the rent is anymore. I could sit out and wait. See, that's another thing is everyone should be able to have deep pockets before you start in real estate. That you can go in there and you can hold on and you don't have to you don't have to go into accepting people that want to pay you less and play the games. You don't have to accept people that may have a less than stellar credit history in your home. You have to carry the burden. And I've always been able to do that with my business. And my money is my own. I mean, this is all my money. Anything I've done is my own money. I've learned by doing it. And I've always had money in the bank. And I have always been a great saver, Darren, since I was a little girl. That's the other thing my parents taught me. Put the money in the bank, save your money, don't waste it. So I think that's a big lesson to learn is don't lower your standards. I have never lowered my rent. Actually, I've raised my rent. Even during COVID, I raised it to get the right people, or I've left it empty. And if I can't find the right people, it stays empty. So, but you have to have the financial finesse to learn how to do that, right? And it's not always easy.
And I guess that circles back to what you said about taking it slowly. I mean, I guess if you take it too fast, you're not going to be in position to, play those slow approaches if things go south, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And that's a lot of great information. And this year has been, wild, the last 16 months or so. And, I'll be interested to see how things kind of keep changing and keep evolving over the next few months. And do you think there's anything that people can expect this summer as things open up?
Well, I can see again the people continuing to buy at crazy prices.
Yeah, you think it's going to continue?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, yeah, and which is ridiculous now because what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, Darren. once this scare passes, now I don't know if we're going to have a fourth wave or not in the fall, because they're predicting that, right? Okay. So in the meantime, everyone is trying to spend all their money, and they're starting to, they're really very excited by all of this, and they'll get into deals they shouldn't be getting into because they think it's never going to end. Well, yes, it's going to end. I don't know who this is. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Let me just close this off. Let me just I have to close off. Okay, I'm back once again. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
This is in real time, right? Okay. So what I see happening is the reverse is going to happen. People are okay. They ran away from Toronto or the big cities to come out here, but they'll get bored with the lifestyle because that's not their lifestyle. And then what happens if work says to them, oh, well, you have to come back to work. You're not going to get paid, which is what's happening already, right? What are they going to do? Yeah. If they've moved into an area where there's no jobs, okay, because a lot of the areas they've moved into do not have jobs, what are they going to do? Decide to just stay and pay their rent and just live there for free? Like, I mean, like you've got to think about this. And so I see the reverse happening, that people are going to start selling at a loss to go back to Toronto, or they're going to travel 3 or 4 hours a day because their job is in Toronto, and the company says, I'm sorry, you have to come to work. You cannot, or you have to come 4 or 5 times, or 3 or 4, whatever it is. It's going to make it difficult for them. It's not going to be the same as before. So they've made this foolish decision to leave everything behind, come here, get a house that is less expensive. But when they go back and they have to buy something, guess what? They won't be able to afford it. And that's what's happened is that I found, and I've read about people that sold their house. They made a lot of money, but they don't have enough money to go to the next house. Right. They had to move in. They had to move in with their children. They just couldn't afford to buy another house.
Yeah, no,
it's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not surprised that all took place. But one thing you mentioned there, the 3 to 4 hour drive. Having grown up in and around the city, I do not miss it at all. So the drives are one thing for me. But I want to thank you, and I want to move into the questions now. We've had a few come through during the session. So the first one we're going to start off with is, how much does a paralegal typically cost? I believe that was one of the earlier things. Paralegal.
Well,
what does a paralegal cost?
I have no idea, because when I use my paralegal, I never really even asked the price. I just paid her. I didn't care because I knew she could solve my problems. And I've used one paralegal only. And I started using her. I was in real estate for many years before I had to even use a paralegal. And so I let her do my N4s. I let her do everything for me. I didn't want to be bothered. And you probably say, why would you do that, Maria? Because it was a business. I didn't want to lose sleep over it. And she knew exactly what to do, what paperwork to get ready, what to say in court. Like, I just sat back and they said, are you Maria? Yes, I am. Whatever it is. So I don't know how much it costs. You phone up and find out beforehand. Just phone up and find out how much is it
that makes a lot of sense. And it actually leads up to the next question pretty nicely. Do you utilize a team? And I imagine what that means is, do you have the same paralegal? Do you have the same agent? Do you utilize the same people over and over? They're often referred to as a power team.
Yes, I have a power team that I've built up and I keep using. I have the same mortgage broker for 21 years. Right. I have the same real estate agent for 21 years. I use the same banking for 35 years. Like, oh yeah, I keep the same power team. And then I have people who do the work for me, same people. I don't change out. And the only time I would find someone else is if, let's say I talk to my mentor, because I still talk to my mentor after 21 years and say, hey, who do you use for this? And I know he has good people. So I just phone them up and say, hey, I got your name through such and such, and can I get some work done? That's how I do it. That's how I build it up. And I use the same ones. I don't play around. I'm not going to go and chase another mortgage broker, because I've done that. I made mistakes doing that. So I do not do any of that. I don't waste my energy and time for a couple points here and there, because it all flushes out at the end. Yeah, because again, I'm a long-term investor and I'm a value investor. I don't have to squeeze everything out of every single decision I make. But again, I don't go into decisions I make that I don't know I can make money with. So that's what saved me every single time, is that.
Well, that's great, and you know, it sounds from at least your approach that you know a good team or a good paralegal or a
Yeah.
good agent is kind of worth their weight in gold if you're a long-term investor.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Don't.
Excellent.
Yeah. I look at this as a business. This is not a hobby. This is not that you're going to get rich quick scheme, which is what people are falling in for, Darren. That's
Right.
why they make the stupid moves they make. And just go on any of the Facebook groups there for landlords, and you see the mistakes they're making. These are basic mistakes. They don't even know what real estate's about. They don't even realize they're in a business, and you have to pay for, for everything you do. Like, even getting a lawyer, you have to pay for it. So
Right.
you better make sure before you go into it, you have the money to pay for it. It will never cash flow at the beginning. You're going to have to put money into the building. So let's say you get a single family dwelling and like you paid 600,000. You have to put some work in it to make it cash flow. One family can't afford $5,000 or three, they can't. So you've got to be very careful what you're doing and don't expect to make millions overnight. I want to tell you something, but that my mentor told me years ago. He said, okay, I wanted to go into bigger buildings at one point. I thought, what do you think? And I spoke to my mortgage broker and I spoke to my mentor. He says, look, Maria, he says, you're doing so well with what you're doing right now. Stick with what you know. He says, because, with a house, you can make a couple $1,000s a decision that you lose. But when that building, you make hundreds of thousands of dollars that you lose. And another thing he said, look, if you want to become a millionaire, you're going to have to pay for $1 million worth of mistakes, because it's not easy to become a millionaire. You've got to learn all those lessons until you get there. So it's foolish for someone to think you own a couple of properties, you're a millionaire. You're a millionaire on paper, but you're not a millionaire.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And we'll wrap it up with one last question.
Sure.
This one is in reference to your statement about kind of going against the trends. Why do you think short-term rentals are oversaturated now?
Well, because the type of people that are going in, well, why? Because there's too many people going into it that don't know the business again. And again, you're going to go on Facebook groups, you're going to see people talking about people that destroy their property. Because whether you do long or short-term rentals, you better check up who those people are.
Right.
So even if you're on Airbnb, you should be asking the right questions. Is why are you moving? Why do you want to stay in my place just for a month? Like, this is where they make their mistakes, is they think it's easy money, right? Well, the bad people are coming through Airbnb and these short-term rental websites to come into your home because they can't do it regularly. So guess what? They're using the short-term rental websites to get into your home, and they there's pandemonium to pay for. There's too many groups out there, Darren, that cater just to short-term rentals that I go on and I read and I have to get off, because there's so many things that are going on in the long-term rentals too, with bad tenants.
Great. And yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that concludes this session. So Maria, I want to thank you. Some really insightful stuff. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Everybody watching, I would encourage you to check out Maria's work. She's got a lot of good stuff, especially for you landlords who are trying to improve your process. So thank you so much, Maria. And I hope you have a great day.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now. Take care. Bye, Darren. Bye.